Welcome to Koffee Talks, a Pokémon card collecting podcast, featuring David Person, owner of the world's most complete English Pokémon card collection, and Dan Norton, a longtime collector with all the knowledge behind the cards.
Hey everyone, how is it going? It's another Coffee Talks. Yes, we are a little bit late because I think David might actually have something to say when I ask him what he's been up to this week, because I believe you've had a pretty busy weekend, David. What have you been up to card-wise?
Dan, I can't. Why do you do this? You know that I need to keep secrets, right? And I can't just, when you present it to me like that, who's going to watch if I give away the farm before I even, milk the chickens? You know what I'm saying? It doesn't make any sense. And I'm not sure you milk chickens anyways. You might milk cows, you might find an egg somewhere, but I don't want to give away the farm, Dan. It's too early. We have a few loyal viewers. We love all of them. It's like our family, our extended family. We're going to have a Midwest party sometime near Columbus, Ohio, invite everybody out to the farm. And so, Dan, I don't know, but I've had, Dan, I'm so busy I can't breathe. I'm sitting here. What are we running, a day late now and $1 short? I've got a headache. Yeah. I've got so much going on in Pokemon. I'd love to reveal in the next 3 to 4 weeks that people will be stunned, excited. They'll be actually, I don't even have any words to describe it. So, and I did go to the Magic convention this weekend, and that was fun, and met a few people over there because I think I'm maybe moving all the Pokemon stuff out, get rid of it, and go right into Magic. It seems to resonate more with me. I like Magic even more than Pokemon now. And no, not really. Don't send me letters. Talk to my agent if you have a problem, okay? Dan, I don't have an agent. Dan, your hair should have an agent. I just want to tell you, the way it's looking right now, today is actually a very nice day. I'm very impressed with your hair. The color, the body of it, the volume, it's tremendous, Dan. I've said nothing and I've said everything. Dan, how was your week?
My week was alright. I'll tell you, all I wanted you to say was mention that you've been to Magic Fest. That's really all I was hoping to get out of that, which you did. And let me tell you, you do not want to move to collecting Magic, because if you thought collecting Pokemon was bad at the moment, wow, would collecting Magic be an absolute nightmare at the moment. You would not be happy trying to collect Magic, but we'll not go down that road. Yeah, my week has not been too bad. A lot of it has been opening up 151. I'm sure we'll talk about 151 a lot later. But I opened up a lot of the products, well, all of the products that came out so far, plus a lot of booster bundles, which is very cool. I won't go on too much about those because you can see the videos already on the channel. But that's been a lot of this week. Laura ran a Learn to Play thing, and we're actually getting prepped because next weekend we have another card show, so I'll be working a card show, doing some sales, stuff like that. So I've been kind of starting to prep for that. And of course, I've been playing and talking about Lorcana, which I know you also have no interest in as it's another card game. But that's been another thing I've been doing.
Dan, who's on charge for this 151 set? I know you guys alternate, you and Laura. So who gets first shot at the cards for the 151 set for the collection?
Laura's getting them first. We don't actually alternate between sets. We alternated between eras. So Laura got all the Sun and Moon stuff first, I got Sword and Shield first, and then she's getting Scarlet Violet first, which has actually worked out quite nicely for me because the Sword and Shield sets are hard to finish, but the Scarlet Violet sets are a lot easier to finish, so I'm actually a lot closer on my Scarlet Violet stuff than she is on her Sword and Shield. To be honest, I'm a lot closer on my Scarlet Violet than I am on my Sword and Shield, despite the fact that I'm the second set of Scarlet Violet and the first set of Sword and Shield. But it's a lot of it is because, when you're buying those bonus boxes and stuff, you'll get packs from a few different sets. So it makes it easier not trying to jump back and forth as who's getting this first, who's getting that first, when we just define it by eras.
That's very good. I guess that you're out there at this point hoping that this era has a lot less sets than the previous one. That way you win and you can move right on to the next era.
I mean, I'm guessing it'll have about the same number of sets. I just need to hope that they're easier to finish, which they have been.
Okay.
I will say, only exception to that rule ever was, even if it's my turn to go first, if Laura gets a staff card by her actually working an event, she gets that one first, and then I have to get the second one.
Dan, at this point, I'd get an attorney if I can. I think there's too many clauses built in that are in her favor, and I can also help you with that. I love Laura to death, but I don't like the fact that she seems to be taking advantage of you on a perpetual basis. So whatever I can do to help, except like Lorcana, I'm good for. Okay, Dan?
Yeah, but it is worth remembering that we're a single income household and it's her income, so she also pays for the mortgage and the car and everything else. And the only stuff I actually pay for is cards, which I make money for by selling other cards. But I wouldn't have anywhere to live if it wasn't for her, so I have to let her get the upper hand in the cards sometimes.
It makes sense, Dan. Dan, I've got a couple more comments I want to make before we get to the actual comments real quick, because I don't want to make the segment too long. But here's the deal, buddy. So I'm going to be going into something else very soon. I hope so. Anybody out there that wants to help Uncle Dave do some live streaming, you want to give me some information, I like to do a little live streaming. I think Dan's going to do a little live stream. Might be doing some live streaming together. It's going to be fun, a lot of fun, because I've got a lot of personality and a lot of personality quirks, and I've got a lot of troubling, habits that I'd like to have the whole world see. So anyways, I was watching tutorials to get used to and ready for this live streaming, which we've done, by the way, in the past, but I don't remember how to, it involves OBS and some other stuff. So reach out, help a friend. Okay. In the meantime, I was watching these videos about how do you get people to watch more of what Dan and I are doing right now, which are basically not live, but pre-recorded podcasts. And Dan, I want to point this out to you. Number one, they say you got to hook the audience early. So today we've done nothing like that. We've said nothing to entice anybody to watch any remainder of the show. We should be both, embarrassed. We should be sad. We should be apologetic. So we are all those things, guys. We're really sorry that we didn't hook you early. I know some other podcasts will take a piece of the podcast later and they'll put it right in the very beginning and whatever. Good luck to all that. That's fine. Dan, we got to connect them. We got to tell them what the podcast is going to connect to later, sooner than later. We're going to be talking about World's Cards today. Don't leave. Don't go anywhere. It's an incredible story, something you'll be able to tell your grandchildren one day. And Dan, the other thing is they want to know about us. I found out that people want to know about you and me. Me, my life, you, your hair. Possibly the dogs, a little bit about Laura. Maybe Laura and Lorcana. Is there Lorcana? Dan, do you collect Lorcana? Never mind. I just came up with that. Dan, I took a little medicine and it hasn't kicked in to slow me down at this point. So Dan, they want to know about you. So somewhere in the podcast, start talking about you. Say, my love, my life, what I stand for, what I'm a being. You know what, guys? I don't sleep at night. They want to be a friend to us. They want to know more about us personally and not just. By the way, it's interesting. The comments you're going to get to in a minute allude to exactly that. So somebody that's doing these videos to try to help people get better at video taking and podcasting actually knows what she's talking about. I'm done, Dan.
I bet the people watching wouldn't mind if you stopped banging your hand on the table when you're talking as well.
I don't know what it is. I think I just get so animated and so exclamated and so motivated, and anything else with an aided at the end. Okay. So I'm not going to do this.
We can hear it. We can hear it every time.
Okay. I'm not doing it again for the rest of the podcast. My hands are now in a tied rope. Should we move on to the comments?
Yes, let's move on to the comments and we'll talk about us later. Maybe at the end we'll talk about us.
Okay, good, Dan. Thanks.
Let's take a look at your comments.
So we have a decent amount of comments this week. I will say a lot of them are from Stephen Kissoon, who is a new listener, I think joined in the last couple of weeks listening to our stuff, but is really, really into our stuff. So we'll get all of his in a moment. First, we have Pokemon Gifts, though. He says, I'm from the I'll say that again. I'm from West Midlands, but I would love to see you guys. I would love to go to the Van Gogh Museum. Me and Laura are going to go to the Van Gogh Museum on our way over to the UK. We're just going to go for one day. If there are people from the West Midlands and other places wanting to meet, maybe I'll contact Matty ahead of time, figure out a day I'm free, and we'll get Matty to arrange some sort of meet-up in the north, and then I'll just turn up where I'm told to. But no promises on that. I just know Matty's commented later. We'll see how that goes.
When is that trip, Dan? Again, what are the dates of that trip?
It's going to be end of October into early November. First off, we're going to Lille. Laura's judging the regionals there. And then the plan is to go up to Amsterdam for a day. I will say that the Van Gogh exhibit, the Van Gogh X Pokemon exhibit, starts in the next couple of days from when we're recording. And hopefully they announce the ending date of the exhibit then, because if the exhibit ends before we're traveling, then we're not going to also take the day trip to Amsterdam. But if we find out that it's definitely still going on, the plan is to do a day to Amsterdam then, and then over to the UK. Let me try and find the actual dates, because I know my brother's wedding I know is on the 27th, so I think it's the 20th to the 22nd is when we're in Lille, hoping to be in Amsterdam the 23rd, and then I think we're in the north of England up until about the 5th.
So I think what's good about all that, Dan, is that this will allow Laura plenty of time to get her planning done, even if it's alternative routes for different situations based on the Van Gogh situation. Dan, it's really important. I need to know, just for historical purposes, was Van Gogh the artist that actually cut off a piece of his ear?
Yes, he was. He suffered from very major depression and a lot of other illnesses and psychosis and stuff, and at one point he cut off his own ear. It's a very sad story, the story of Van Gogh's life, but he's a very talented artist. I'm a huge fan of his work. So
Okay, because I'm a very talented Pokemon card collector. With based on as much psychosis is going on and likely to happen, there's a good chance I'll end up with no ears at some point, Dan. But at this point, that could either be beneficial depending on who I'm listening to, like you on the podcast, or not. I'm not sure. Move on, Dan, please. I've got to just keep moving.
all right, well, we hit the first of Stephen's comments, so we'll read this one. We'll do all of Stephen's comments together and then go back to the ones that came in between. Sverti said, thanks so much for answering my other comments. I have another one for David. Can you say why you're not a big grader of cards? Even if not for value, doesn't it make sense for protection?
Stephen, that's a great question. I don't consider grading to be a protective endeavor. I wouldn't do it for that. It makes a great deal of sense to slab for protection, but I think I protect my stuff very well. Certainly, the important cards are in some kind of hard card holder or whatever. But the problem is you get into a situation where the amount of storage you have when you have 30,000 cards is tremendous. If you were slabbing everything, then it's the visibility. Do you have them in binder pages where you can actually enjoy them? Then you segregate, well, what value do you start, grading or not grading? It's not out of the question at some point, but I've never trusted the grading process. I've never trusted the fact that somebody would get it right on the values. As it gets more precise now, it's maybe of more of interest. I think for authenticating, sometimes you need to. I may talk about that in the next couple of weeks, but I can protect well enough without going and having a 20-year-old tell me that something is an 8 when I know it's a 10 or it's a 9 or whatever, and the costs involved and the risk in getting it back and forth and my dissatisfaction with whatever grade would come in. So yeah, it's I feel like I protect things well enough, just being meticulous enough with the collection. But that's a great question.
Stephen's next question was, do you guys collect Japanese cards, and what do you think about the Japanese Championship Series cards?
So I certainly don't do much of the Japanese at all. I don't really collect them. I've occasionally had collections where I've been asked to buy some, but then I'll put them right back up on the market. So I made a decision early on in my collecting journey that said, can I read the cards? And so since I couldn't read the cards in the Japanese, this far off that I venture there is just bilingual cards, of which there's only a couple. And then past that, I'm really happy that's the decision I made, just because there's so many English cards to collect. And now between the 4 sets a year, like it's always been or whatever, and additionals and promotional cards and regionals and worlds and stuff, it's a big enough undertaking for me.
I collect some Japanese cards. I don't do any sort of putting sets together and stuff like I do with English. It's mainly if Japanese gets a card where the artwork has never made it over to English. We never got any version of the card, and I really like the artwork. I'll maybe try and pick some of those up. Or if it's promo sets and it's a nice looking set, like I have some of the movie sets that are still in their original 9 card folders and stuff. So those things all look nice together. So I'll occasionally pick those up, but that's where it mainly ends for me. I'll say the Japanese Championship Series cards. I think we're maybe picking up the Pikachu because Laura just really loves Pikachu, and a friend of ours got a lot. But again, it's not something I'd be chasing down the full set for, because usually that artwork from those does make it over if I'm thinking of the right ones, if I'm thinking about the Eevee and stuff that they had the last couple of years. So rather than paying a few $100s on a Japanese card that's got a much cheaper English equivalent, I'm more going to be buying some rarer English cards.
Yeah, and I love there's some Japanese cards I really love, and there's some even other country cards I love as well. Some of the promos and stuff that the artwork's fantastic, but at some point it's just really hard. I don't know of anybody that collects everything. I know Rusty probably just obtains a lot of different things that would sort of fall into both categories, but it'd just be so daunting to do both. Dan, because I know you love Vaporeon and stuff, do you collect Japanese Vaporeons, or do you try to keep that to English as well?
I have a few Japanese Vaporeons. I have I think only 1 or 2 in my actual PSA 10 collection of Vaporeons. That I was mainly keeping to English. It might even only be 1 Japanese PSA 10, and I think that was because it was an auction that went for $20 or something. I really do want to pick up the Japanese Vaporeon VMAX alt art at some point, because that is one where it is so much rarer in Japan. Obviously, we've got a cheap version over here, but because it's Vaporeon, it's one I want to track it down. it was a trophy card level. Well, not trophy card level. It was a lottery promo in Japan, so there's I think 3,000 copies of it. Whereas over here, it was in a box set. So at some point, I'd like to try and track that one down. But again, it's mainly English stuff for the Vaporeons that I'm tracking down.
Okay.
Steven's next comment says, ironically, the flippers of world cards are the long-term losers. The collectors who hold on to them for a while will be the true winners. Yeah, that's true for a lot of collectibles. It's just the longer you hold it, the more chance you have of making money. But the people who are flipping stuff generally can't invest that amount of money long-term. They don't have that amount of free capital to buy stuff and wait the 10, 15 years, whatever. It's all about smaller margins, but huge turnaround with people flipping cards.
Yeah, that's basically the pizza restaurant model, where no pizza restaurant typically ever goes out of business because you're just consistently, it's the one restaurant model that you see in towns that every other restaurant type has gone out of business, but they don't because they've got enough volume going on with smaller margins. I'm not sure I agree with your one comment, Dan, which just says, maybe you're right in that you typically might realize better returns on a longer basis. But there's certainly things like sports cards in the 90s where had you sold those cards in the mid 90s or early, thousands, 2000s, you would be much further ahead than if you'd held them till today. So obviously it's always dependent underlying on the franchise and how much the manufacturers of the franchise, like in this case, Pokemon, are doing to keep their things front and center, as well as just people's love of the franchise in general. Pokemon has so many appealing characteristics to new generation, to the first generation, to the coming generation, and then everything around it. And it's just so cute. So I think that we're very fortunate to be part of that hobby. Contrast that with something like Lorcana, Loricon, which is a convention you can go to in Columbus, Ohio. Ohio, how you doing? So you can go to Columbus, Ohio, and you can see the Loricon convention, and she will show you everything about Laura at that convention. So you may want to sign up for that early and often.
That's horrific. I can't wait to hear her comment this week.
Okay, no problem. We got to get her to say something other than I'm just commenting for the algorithm.
Do you realize you were halfway through a sentence about Lorcana there? And you didn't say anything about Lorcana. You just completely went off on a tangent.
You know what?
What you were about to say was that Pokemon has the franchise history, and then you said, unlike Lorcana. And I don't know if you remember when we talked about it, but Lorcana is a Disney TCG. Disney is like one of the biggest brands in the world, might be the biggest brand in the world. Like, if you look at everything, I'm pretty sure Disney still leaves Pokemon in the dust in terms of brand recognition. I think Mickey Mouse still beats Pikachu in terms of what people recognize.
But not in franchise value, I'll tell you that. But recognition, you might be right. I'm not sure.
Does Pokemon beat Disney in franchise value?
It's the number one. Disney is below it, 100%. Yeah, guaranteed. I've seen all the numbers a myriad of times. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, for real.
That if that's true, that is crazy considering how much Disney owns. That they own like Marvel and they own Star Wars now and they own everything. But
well, maybe they don't break out by that. I mean, when you look at those charts, what you'll see is Disney listed separately from Marvel, listed separately from Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
So maybe that's how they evaluate it. But on Disney alone, Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse, and there's like a dog named Pluto or something, and there might be some ducks, like Donald's got some cousins, Weenie and Sheenie or something. So if you look for all
his nephews.
Oh, his nephews. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, all right. So Stephen Kassoon's probably got 6 to 8 more comments.
He's got another couple.
Okay.
He says, what are your top 5 favorite sets of all time? I'll quickly mention a couple of my favorite sets. I think we've said before, I was a big fan of all of the HGSS era. Delta Species, I think, is a cool set. There's a lot. I think that would be maybe a topic we can do properly in depth at some point, but we'll not fill a comment section with that.
Yeah, and I refuse to answer on the grounds that it may incriminate me. I love everything. I'm a lover of loving things that everybody loves and that are lovable. All the sets are so wonderful. They're so fantastic. I could never attempt to pick just one.
David also hates turning his phone off during recordings or airplane moding it. He doesn't know how to.
I'm not airplane moding. Listen, here's what's going on. I'm on the computer.
Yeah, I know you do. I know you don't airplane mode your phone. I can hear it.
I'm not on the phone. The beeps, my phone is on silence. What's happening is the beeps are coming on the computer and I have the volume turned up so I can hear you're always talking but right now and hear it loudly.
Yeah,
that's why.
The beeps are your email notifications, but I think that buzzing and vibrating is a mobile phone.
I don't think it is. I'm not sure, but maybe I have maybe my other personality's in here making calls. I don't know, Dan.
Okay.
I'm going to work on this. Okay, I'm going to
All right.
evaluate the podcast after the fact and see what I did wrong.
All right. Well, you won't know half of it because I have to do the work and go through muting it all the time.
Fair enough.
Oh,
Next week I'm coming on.
half of them get cut out.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Stephen's last comment was, "I've made a tremendously poor decision, but I've enjoyed it." He doesn't tell us what that decision was, so we can only speculate.
No, that is the best. That is the best. That is my favorite comment of the week. So thank you for finishing on a high note. What Stephen did was he got all the way through our podcast, which was fantastic. And at some point, I said to the 10 or 12 viewers that were still watching at the end, if you've watched this segment, if you watched all the way to the end, you've made a tremendously poor decision.
Oh yeah.
And so when he said that, Stephen, thank you. I still laugh every time I read it. Thank you so much.
Imagine the fact that we end our podcasts like that, and you start off by going, "How can we make people listen?" and then end it by going, "You've made a terrible decision if you listen to this."
It makes no sense.
Oh, 20 minutes in and we've barely started the comments. We have Cubicles Punk Rock, which is Joshua, who we talked about the card you bought from him last week. He says, "Appreciate you guys. Awesome episode." We appreciate you too, Joshua. Thank you for selling that card to David. And, just thank you for opening up some more connections we might possibly have in future for future cards like that. That was a discussion of the Asian exclusive Pokemon cards that were printed in English. If you don't know about those, go back. Even if you don't watch the whole of the last episode, go to the featured cards bit. It's timestamped in the description. Watch that. I think that just 15-minute segment, I think, is a very, very cool one, very informative, and I think people should know about those cards.
And Dan, I'm sure you just said that, but since the internet is so poor, I didn't hear a word you said, but it's really good to watch your mouth move. So I think you probably said this was the Philippine version of the Asian version or something, correct?
I didn't say it, but we said it last week, so...
Okay.
Yeah, it was the Philippines champion was the one that Joshua sold us.
Yeah, pretty amazing. I showed some folks that were here from the Magic convention this weekend, and I said, this is like one of one, which is just amazing. Yeah. You have it, and we're so grateful to Josh for selling it. And Josh contacted me this past week, just many of the things I'm always working on. And he said that he's trying his best in the next few days to see if he can secure a staff card from there as well, of which there might only be 5 or so. So,
okay.
So that's a really rough thing. And again, I appreciate his efforts very much and just being kind and trying to help out. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah. And when you mentioned one of one, we said last week, but these 4 Asian promos from the first year are going to be the only one of ones because they're adding age divisions next year. So securing these 4 would be an unbelievable achievement. But not to retread old ground. Go watch last week's if you missed all of that. Anyway, next we have Eric the Crazy One, just says hilarious.
Thanks, Eric. You're crazy.
And
I appreciate it.
And then Steve Jackson just commented lol. So people are finding this one funny.
Yeah. Thank you, buddy. We appreciate your continued loyalty and watching.
Couple of comments from Shadowless Jack. He says, "Thank you so much for the well wishes and congrats on our new little one. It was great to meet David's sister. Speak for yourself. Also, it was me with the ETBs for you. We can talk about that at our next security meeting. You were mentioning someone had got Pokemon Center 151 ETBs for you." And then he had another one saying, "Adding another comment for the algorithm. Love you both, and the world will be much worse off without the two of you in it and this incredible podcast."
Yeah, I told Shadowless Jack to change his name to Powerless Jack because he's got 2 little girls and a wife now. When you've got that many women around you, you've pretty much, you've got nothing left. So he appreciated that, and I appreciate him. And I'm going to say something. This will lead back to Dan, but I thank you for Shadowless Jack and Jeffrey Tatsu Hurtgen, who's actually a Pokemon judge as well and trying to get to Worlds this year, for following through with their kind offers to sell me the 151 Pokemon Center ETBs. I got Jeffrey's one of them in the mail today, and that was really kind, and I really appreciated it. Just again, I don't typically open these things, but it's just nice to look at and know that I have something special from there that I got shut out on as usual. So thank you very much for you guys, your kindness and generosity.
Excellent. It was good that you were able to get them. Those were some of the ones I got mine earlier this week too. Anyway, Catch 'em All Collectibles says, "David is too much and his sister is pretty funny too." And then this was one of the few comments I ever replied to. I tend not to reply to the comments on these because we talk about them on the podcast, but I think it's important for everyone to see this. Just imagine logging on to record a podcast and suddenly David's sister's there with just no prior warning. Like you didn't know that was happening. Nothing. David's told you he's going to be on a podcast. It's 20 minutes late. You've been sitting there waiting, and then suddenly the camera comes on, and then David's sister is what you're met with. It's unbelievable.
Dan, at least I give you topics for your continued therapy sessions. I know that with the copays as cheap as they are, I don't want you to run out of anything to talk about. And I know you and Laura get along so well.
Oh,
and the allergy, the dogs,
that famously cheap therapy. Yeah, when people go, "Oh, what's real bargain basement price stuff?" Oh, it's therapy. Yeah.
Oh, good stuff, Dan. You know, if the hair doesn't get you, the therapy will. So, okay.
Yeah. Peak That Chew says, Dave's sister for the win. I really hate that people were on board with that segment. Question, could either of you tell a story about convincing a world competitor to sell you their winning cards that was hesitant? I imagine you've run into it before and curious how you handled it. The podcast keeps getting better and better, especially with the new surprise guest. Well, we've never really gone out of our way to try and convince someone to sell if they didn't want to or they were hesitant. All we ever do is try and make sure that they know that we're going to beat any other offers, that if they're wanting to sell, it is better to do it in person at the event just for security reasons on both parties. You don't have to worry about the shipping. No one has to travel to meet anyone else. Payments can be done, friends and family. It used to be cash until they got so expensive. But it was a lot more simple. But we've always said we never want anyone to the next day regret selling it. That's why whenever we make our trips to Worlds, where we can, other than the fact that it's a vacation, we're in the World's location for a few days afterwards, gives people a bit of breathing room. Nowadays there's loads of people approaching them at a tournament. A lot of people just want to say, I want to get out of here. I don't want to talk to anyone right now because there's 10 people coming at them. So for convincing to sell, it's usually never us who actually does the convincing. We usually just put the offer out there, say, if you get a better offer, come to us. A lot of times it will be friends of the person. I think the only times I've ever really talked in depth about someone is if I've personally known them as a friend. Like, I've talked to some people and said, look, I think you should sell to David. If you're thinking about selling, this is the best way to go about it. But normally it will be the person wants to talk it over with people who are not in any way involved in the deal, and people that they trust, get their opinions and stuff on it first. But yeah, that's how we go about it. We never want anyone to sell something they don't want to sell.
Yeah, I agree completely with everything you said, Dan. Convincing is not a word we would ever use. I think as close as we ever come to that would be at this point. I'm very willing now, and Dan has convinced me of this in the last, few months with his discussions about really what he saw at Worlds and what went on at Worlds, and he's not the only one. Other people discussing it as well, is that I have been collecting for a collection. And some people actually care about that. Some people could care less, give them as much money as possible, whatever. But what happens is the flippers are driving prices up, but they're being flipped. And so if they're buying and being flipped, you have to wonder as a seller, boy, should I have held out longer and waited to just get the flip price instead of selling it to somebody in between. Well, I'm buying and trying to make offers that are really very, very strong so that someone doesn't have to worry that they got ripped off by selling to me and I was going to go flip it later on. So that would be convincing point number one, is just letting people know who I am and what I've done in the past and that none of these cards have been sold. And number two would be maybe raising the price. So somebody says, okay, you know what, I'm going to pay $80,000, and I'll say, all right, well, you know what, let me do this for you. Let me pay 85 or 90,000 or whatever it is. That's as far as convincing goes, just trying to make a better offer for someone, but not saying, hey, you need to sell it to me or whatever. Because like Dan said, we aren't strong arming anybody. They have to, a good deal is one that both participants are willing participants in. And that's why I leave that. So
I suppose with the raising the price too, obviously you raise your price if there's competing offers, but you have been known sometimes if someone is on the fence about a price, you will sometimes say, look, add, another 1,000, add another 2,000. If it makes you feel more comfortable, we'll go for that. Or there have been times, I suppose, when you've already got, like, say you've bought a number one and you've already bought the run from someone, so you don't need to buy the run. and then the number 2 place also wants to sell their run of finalists down to 32, and you don't need that, but you will pay them a fair market price on that if they're wanting to sell everything together, if it makes them more likely to go through with the sale.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's always a way to go with it.
Right.
Anyway, we've got to get through these comments. Next one is from Christopher. Says, great show as always. And if gel won't hold the mohawk up, you can always try glue, Dan. What I had in last week was using hair glue. And it just, like I say, my hair is just so thick and heavy. It's very, very difficult to do it. I'm not far off doing the old punk thing. I think you put lard and stuff in it and then you bake it in the oven for 10 minutes, but I'm not quite there yet. We'll try some other things first.
I would like to see you put your head in the oven for 10 minutes, Dan, just to see how you come out. What kind of nice, shade of tan Dan comes out. And really, you guys as viewers, you have only yourselves to blame 100% on any of this. The reason Dan can't put the kind of product in his hair that he needs to is because he's flat broke. Laura has all the money and all the control. So if you guys could get a few more viewers to watch these podcasts, it would be important. Dan could monetize and afford a little bit, some of that real professional gel that the celebrities use, and we wouldn't have these discussions anymore. Blame yourselves, don't blame Dan. Go ahead, Dan, move right through it.
Next one is from Mr. Cool Cat. Just says the interview at the end was wonderful. It was. I don't know why I didn't get whatever job that was I was interviewing for.
Mr. Cool Cat, if you like the interview at the end, hang around for the interview at this end. I'm going to continue on with that process. I evaluated last podcast's ending of the not ending, the ending that never had, the ending that never should have happened and never did. And because Dan didn't get the job, I think a little more training is necessary. And so we'll go into that a bit today. Don't hang around to the end, but just wait till the end is done.
Cool. We then have Playscape Games. Stephen from the UK says, so cool that David was able to get a hold of some of these one-of-one champion cards. Was expecting these to be an almost impossible task. I mean, we only have 2 out of the 4. It still might be an impossible task, and we only have 1 out of the 4 top 8s. And then, as David was just mentioning, the staffs might be as rare or rarer than the top 8. So we'll see. He also says, fun fact, the winners of those tournaments also got an exclusive Pokemon card game hoodie. I did not know about that. I knew about the world's winners getting the leather jackets and stuff, but I didn't realize they got a hoodie. That's really cool.
Yeah, really cool.
Rattle Pokemon says, Dan just needs some Joico Ice Spiker styling hair glue or equivalent. I've never heard of that one. I think Rattle's Canadian. That might be a Canadian brand. But I do have like extra stronghold, top-notch hairstyling glue, and I just have the thickest hair known to man. Like, I'm borderline a chinchilla. I'm close after taking dust baths.
It doesn't matter, Dan. I don't know if you understand that when it comes, you don't look this stuff up. You see, what you do is you don't think it through, buddy. You just basically color your hair, come up with a style or something you want to do, and you never think through the whole process. There's consequences to everything. So let me just give you a quick bit of education. You see, Rattle Pokemon knows this stuff. He knows that Canadian Mohawks are the Mohawks that the world are known for. Then the second one is the US Mohawks, and finally UK Mohawks. So you can consider yourself a USA permanent resident or whatever the heck you got. You got a green card, a blue card. They should probably give you a damn pink card. But the thing is, Dan, at the end of the day, Big Ben is not known for pink Mohawk gelling upward. So Rattle Pokemon, thank you. Maybe Dan will stop blaming the chinchilla style hair and he'll actually go to Canada, get the right ingredients, put him in. And you're trying to give him some advice and he's still making the lack of accountability excuses. I'm sorry for that. Continue to watch the podcast despite Dan's excuses.
I will have you know that late 70s, early 80s British punk is some of the best music around, and the style that goes with it. So we're not even having that. I'm not even as a joke am I taking that. It's incredible music. The punk scene was huge in the UK.
Move on, my friend.
We're moving on. Craig says, thanks for fulfilling my holes, Dave. It's your sister being on this podcast has got people talking in innuendos in our bloody comment section. She's a terrible influence on everybody. I feel that quote could make some good future merch alongside the tummy knot merch. I bet it could. She's been drawing those still. She has been drawing.
She needs to, because I got a bunch more coming. I can't. But the thing about I'm not known for filling people's holes. So I would like to be, but basically I'm too old at this point. So if I can fill anyone's holes out there, just let me know. I want to be a willing participant to make sure that you're, I can't do mohawks and my hair isn't thick enough, so I just fill holes.
But remember, we're a big serious podcast and we really want to take it seriously and learn how to grow and get people to watch it. But yeah, David's too old to fill people's holes. Unbelievable. Ridiculous. What's next? Gigabuddy says, hello, questions. Could the two of you shed some information on what your lives outside of the Pokemon hobby look like? My whole life is the Pokemon hobby, as is a lot of David's, but I will say, other than that, it is video gaming, it's other card games, it's dealing with my wife and 2 dogs, and cooking. That's it. So much of my life is the Pokemon hobby. But yeah, that's what the rest of it looks like. If you want more detail, why? But you can ask specific questions.
Dan, I just want you to know, buddy, in my heart, you fill my holes, okay? You're just a wonderful guy, and despite all the slack I give you, the flack I give you, if you're having problems with your teeth, the plaque I give you, despite all of that, my friend, you're a great person, and I'm glad when either one of us can fill each other's holes.
If this podcast gets my channel age restricted, I will never forgive you.
No problem.
Do you want to shed some information on your life outside of the Pokemon hobby?
No.
Well, I will. He's a basketball coach. That's what he does in his spare time.
Fine.
Coaches basketball teams, plays a lot of basketball. Well,
Get away all the secrets. That's fine. Give away everything. I mean, you're just lucky I don't hang up right now. If I knew how to hang up on a podcast, I'd be gone, Dan. I don't put up with it. This is the longest comment section in history. I'm loving every minute of it.
People were asking about our lives, and then you told me we had to share stuff, and then you just said no. So
well,
I'm giving them something that you coach basketball.
Because I'm not following you. You're so much more interesting. You're going to think you're going to share your life and then ask me afterwards. Ask me before and let you follow me. But I'm not following you, buddy. I got no chance on that one.
All right, next week you can share something about your life first.
Okay, fair enough.
That wasn't even the whole comment. The two of you are the top tier of collecting. I would guess most of your money and time goes towards Pokemon. Yep. Do you have other hobbies or work? Well, as we've discussed before, I was trying to make online content creation work, and it hasn't gone very well. So after our trip to England, I'm potentially going to have to try and get a job again. My most recent couple of jobs where I worked at a local game store for a while. I left there just because, it was short shift hours, doing 4 or 5 hour shifts, and I would rather have been putting that time into trying to make this thing work. And then before that, I worked in insurance, and I was answering complaint phone calls, and it honestly had me on the brink every day. I absolutely hated that, but I will be looking to a job again in the future. Hopefully something where I don't have to talk to people, hopefully some sort of like data input or some nonsense. Do you want to talk about that at all before I continue the comment? Any of your hobbies or work?
I will just mention that I am gainfully still employed after about 30 years. I'm a wealth management advisor for RBC, which is Royal Bank of Canada. That's one of the largest, if not the largest, financial institution in Canada. And they have a U.S.-based wealth management arm out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. So yes, I do continue to make income and service clients and do things that are important for me alongside the Pokemon hobby. And I've got hopefully satisfied clients that have been with me, and we take care of their financial planning and their wealth management needs, 24/7. And I've been doing that for like 30 years. So yeah, that's the other part of my life before I get to the kids and the basketball and all the other stuff I'm doing. And then of course, with Dan and I doing this now, expanding the Pokemon profile prolifically, lots more to come in the next month or so, stuff that hopefully is unbelievable to you guys that, right now, at least a couple hundred of you will see about, because there's only about 10 trillion people in the Pokemon hobby. But it's okay. If I've got, CyberX collection and Pikachu and Catch 'em All collectibles, and I can't mention all your names, but Cool Cat, all of you, if you're all watching to Dan and I, then when we go to Worlds this year and we party, it's just going to be us 200 in a room together, and we're going to have fun doing it. Got it? That's it.
Cool.
I didn't pound the table. I'm so happy with myself.
Good. The rest of his comment, he says, as some of the cards you're buying could be considered investments, looking at expensive cards, tell me about your other investments or general investment ethics. I have basically no investments and no ethics towards investments because I just don't do it. I live every day as though I'm going to die tomorrow. because with my health, I actually might. I just have to take every day as it comes, not looking anyway towards the future.
Dan, I love that you took us all the way back. You took us back to our original first podcast. I mean,
We talked about
right
death, yeah.
now, I could die a happy man right now. I mean, not because you died, but just because you took us back. So yeah, Dan and I both, we love dying and we love to talk about death. And death is something that we both encompass, and we understand that based on the Final Destination movies, if we avoided it at one point, he could still come for us later on. He's called the Grim Reaper, and he's happy at what he does, but makes us grim. You reap what you sow, by the way, but I don't sow because I'm not familiar with the sewing machines of the old days. What were we talking about, Dan? What was the comment? Investment. Dan and I are collectors. We're collectors at heart, and that's what it is. And we've been very fortunate to pick a collectible that right now is thriving and flourishing. And so it's turned into a relatively reasonable investment. Dan, at the ripe young age, Dan, how old are you? Please interject the number.
I'm 32.
Dan, at the half age of me at 32, I'm actually 62, but so he's not quite half as old, or he might be more than half as old. Or you guys do the math. This isn't a math podcast. If you want a whiteboard math thing, go on YouTube or TikTok. But basically, he's got plenty of years to let his collection grow. I'm on the way out, so I'm definitely thinking about, hey, would there ever be somebody who might appreciate the collection as much as me and keep it together? And so it's in the back of my mind because my kids, they don't like Pokemon. They don't not like Pokemon. They just don't. It isn't the love of their life like it is for mine. So we'll see where it all takes us. But right now, it continues to be the journey to keep the collections growing for both of us. So the rest of it's just gravy on top of the. What do you put gravy on? Mashed potatoes or gravy? Yeah. Some people put it on the chicken fried steak. I don't know. You could put gravy on like chicken and waffles, but I'd put more honey on that. Dan, would you put gravy on anything like grits or something? You put it on the biscuits and gravy, Dan, back in the UK?
Well, biscuits and gravy is a different type of gravy to the gravy that you put on like a roast or mashed potatoes. So you put brown gravy on mashed potatoes or a roast.
Yeah.
But biscuits and gravy is like the sausage meat gravy.
Yeah, but Dan, it's still gravy. Did I specify? Okay, I said put gravy on it. I didn't say put Dan's type of gravy on the thing. But okay, Dan, if you want to get down into the details of how you make the gravy, that's fine. By the way, guys, if you need a gravy recipe, apparently Dan knows everything about different kinds of gravies. Just message him at mypinkhair@Pokemon.com, and he'll get you a gravy recipe right away. But unless he's got a new job, and then he won't have time. He won't have
the gravy recipe that is add hot water to the gravy granules.
Okay, good.
That's printed on the side of the gravy. But yeah, I would put gravy on a roast dinner. That's what I'd like to put gravy on.
Yeah.
Still on the same comment. He asks, at the end of the episode, you touched on getting a job again. What type of work would you like to do? And what type of work does David has done? Yeah, we've talked about that. We mentioned that as we were answering the earlier questions. I want a job where I never, ever have to talk to another human being. Absolutely never have to talk to a customer again. That is what I want. That would be my ideal job. I want to be locked in a room in front of a laptop where I can listen to podcasts and music for 8 hours and then clock off and not have to worry about it.
Yeah, I'll tell you what's interesting. I'm going to go right through this because I just gave enough of an explanation. But what's really interesting to me is if I'm really tired, so I'm working and working and working. I've got some younger friends that I'm trying to sometimes keep a pace in the Pokemon industry with, and I'm fooling myself to think I can even do that. So I don't sleep at night, right? So I get up the next morning and I've got something to do for my regular work, my financial advisory practice. And I enjoy very much interacting with my clients. So it's not that I don't enjoy dealing with that. I do. I love helping people, making sure they're on their way and doing well. But I'm tired. I'm exhausted. And it's hard to do. You got to get up. You got to be professional. You got to do what you got to do. Contrast that with when I've got something going on in a big way with Pokemon that day. As tired as I am, I get up. I grab the phone. I roll out of bed and I say I'm exhausted, but it's a Pokemon day. So it's that passion. What you guys should all be looking for, and it's hard to find, is work where you can be involved in something that you're truly passionate about. And I've never realized that more than the last few months when things have been more and more busy for me in the Pokemon world than they've ever been. And so that's what really keeps me fueled, is finding something where you can have that passion. I know that's one of the reasons Dan is looking so hard to try to find something in the Pokemon side and monetizing the podcast and stuff. And I'm going to try to help him with that as well. But I'm trying anyways. But it's, he feels the same way, that when you can do something that you really enjoy, and you see these other podcasters that have their thousands of followers and they're making a living and they really enjoy it. It's a win-win on both sides. So we're both still working hard to try to do that, but that passion makes a big difference in what your daily activities look like. So
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I was able to turn this content creation into a full-time job properly, making money from it would just be using it to make better content, to be honest. Like, it wouldn't, because we are at a position where, Laura's job pays for all of the things it needs to pay for, and we have a little bit of money left over from that. And then my job currently pays for all the cards and stuff, so it would just mean that we could expand our collections a bit more, and by doing that, make better content. That's all I really want to do is be making good content. Like, actually having the money and stuff doesn't even bother me. Like, I would just be using it for the collection. Like I've always said, I wouldn't care, if my collection was worth 10% of what it is today tomorrow, which means I could buy 10 times more cards tomorrow, because I don't care about having money more than I need. It's like I just like having the collectible items. So yeah, but that we're just getting too deep into this now. Yeah, I'd like to do this as a full-time job, but it ain't working, so I'm going to try and find some terrible office job that I can hopefully do from home and not have to talk to people.
well, we're going to do enough job interviews to have you ready for whatever happens. So, okay, more comments,
good.
my friend?
Yeah, still more. 50 minutes into recording. Laura said, "Oh my god, those shirts, that notebook." I don't even remember what notebook you had. Was it you had something?
I think I ended up watching it back. I apologize for my sister's presence. I had no idea. She's very
It was
manipulative.
just
She had that red organized play notebook, and so yeah,
that'll be why I blocked it out from my memory then, if it was something she was showing off.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right. Your average player says, Dan would be a lovely hire for a worker. Yeah, we'll see. He says, I can't be the only one who gets Shrek and Donkey vibes from David and Dan. All the love, guys. Please keep it up. Laura, if you're struggling to find something to draw, apparently me and David as Shrek and Donkey is what the fans are wanting to see.
It might look good up just on the bodies with the faces, and she's really good at that. But I have to say, I said that the one comment earlier, which I really loved, I think it was by Steven, but I love this one too. This one makes me laugh as much. So I'm going to share the comment of the week with both of you, because this comment really with the Shrek and Donkey, and we've watched those movies here with the kids 8,247 times. We have a running tally on a whiteboard. So that is exactly what Dan and I, other than the odd couple, it would be Shrek and Donkey. It's perfect. Good friends who don't know that they really are. So yeah. Uh-huh.
And as I said, I want to be just alone in my swamp for work, just not talking to anyone.
Yeah.
All right, 2 more comments. Jeffrey says, between David's rants, jokes that fall flat on Dan or otherwise, how have you put up with him for all of these years, Dan? Search me. No clue.
Enough said. Mm-hmm.
There's enough Pokemon things to talk about that we can deal with only talking about Pokemon. That's it. It's the secret to it.
Good one.
All right. Final comment. Finally, it's from Matty. It says, okay, David, I think you've more than made up for the lack of craziness over the past few episodes. You could see the look on Dan's face that he'd reached a level of uncomfort that he'd never experienced before. Yep. Says, would be great to meet up and say hello, Dan, when you're in the Northeast. I'll buy you a Parmo. Well, not a Parmo because I can't eat cheese. But yeah, we can definitely try and meet up when I'm over there, Matty. As I said, if you want to arrange something special for a big meetup with people, who was it who commented earlier? Pokemon gifts all the way back, what seems like a year ago. But you can try and arrange something, Matty, if you want, or me and you will just meet up at some point. We'll work that out close at the time. Anything to say to that one, David?
Yeah, no, I'm done talking to Matty. That guy gets me so angry. I can't even, once I bring up his name, I start to have the smoke coming out of my nose. So I'll move right past Matty. Matty, don't push me. I will throw in a few things that I had on a separate note so we can move right out of this section real quick. Right. One, CyberX Collection. Alex has been working with me to try and acquire a specific disco card, through some of my contacts. Someone else in the podcast, I know Marston, I was able to help do that a little bit as well. So we're working on trying to get a Mewtwo. So reach out, guys, if you have anything you're looking at, and I'll see if I can, reach out to some of my contacts to try and see if I can get discounts on things for you. I'd love to try and do that wherever I can help. Kyle's another follower. He's working to help me acquire a champion card from this year, the actual champion stamped finalist card. We'll probably do something this week on that. And again, nice. His kindness and reaching out to some of the VGC, not VGC, actually, So for some of the Unite players, that's been huge. My thanks to everybody who, puts our interests as much as theirs involved in this whole process. So self-sacrificing, they don't have to, and I really appreciate that. Had a great email from or text or message from Jeffrey Lamar Kaiser, who basically said, David, I just want to tell you, make sure to keep a balance in your life. He's watching all this and thinking, do you ever sleep? Do you ever rest? Do you ever play with a family? Do you ever do anything other than words about, chasing Pokemon cards? And I just really appreciated that advice coming from a friend and saying, hey, just balance everything, because moderation is the key to success in everything. You got to have focus, but you got to have moderation between the extremes. And so those are just great comments. And then finally, I am trying to get out every week now. I'm going to try to at least post once and not just story once on Instagram, because I realize that people from our previous conversations, especially with Jeffrey Hurtgen and stuff, not realizing I'd been out there again. So I want to thank 2mon_mon2 and xglue3civ91 for picking up some packs for the Omega Pack product I put out there. Very little left because, like I told you guys, it was going to sell out immediately. But I'm working on pre-orders for the next series coming out. If you guys know anything as far as live streamers that would be interested in pushing my way, because once this stuff comes out, it's going to be gone again, especially holiday season. But I'm really excited to be having a chance to get some of this and put it out there for you as well, as hopefully myself and as well Dan at some point embark in this live streaming type of world, which will be fun too. So that's all the stuff, rest of the stuff in comments and stuff this week.
Cool.
And now for our highlighted cards of the week.
Okay, so as has been promised for a couple of weeks, we are going to talk about what cards David has been able to obtain from this year's Pokemon World Championships. So David, you just want me to start it off, since I guess I was there and I got some of the cards first, and then you can fill in what's happened since we got back?
Absolutely. You should start the segment, continue the segment, and finish the segment. I'll just listen to the segment. Makes sense.
Great. So, first off, obviously, third and fourth place, the number 3 and number 4 trophies do get given out on the Saturday night rather than the Sunday. And we got pretty lucky. On the actual Saturday, we were able to secure the number 4 trainer. We got it from Federico Camparisi, who was fourth place in Masters VGC. So we picked up the number 4 trainer, plus the stamped run of semi-finalist down to top 32. We also got to speak to Michael Pramawat, who was TCG Masters third place that night. I'd known Pram beforehand. I think I met Pram first back in 2010 when I first went to Worlds, where he got second. And so I just told him our offer, and then he wanted a night to think about it, but managed to pick that up basically first thing Sunday morning before the venue had even opened. Met up with Pram. And we got that one. We again, from Pram, purchased the number 3, and we got another run of semi-finalists down to top 32. So both of those were purchased for the same price. It was $35,000 for the trophy plus the rundown. Yeah,
I pay you. You spent $35,000 of my money on each of those cards, Dan.
Yep, including the runs from semifinalists down.
Dan, just a quick question: what the heck were you thinking? Did you ever think of trying to bid a little lower?
No, we just. I mean, the first one, I didn't even arrange the deal. Another friend of ours arranged the deal, and then for the second one, we paid the same. It's fine.
Great. Oh, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. David, it's not. You're not going to miss it. You don't. Your wife doesn't argue about all the money you spend on Pokemon every single night. Okay, forget it, Dan. Just go on with the story. It seems like it's only going to get better from here.
It meant that you secured 2 out of the 4 trophy cards, while other people who were pretending to make offers were all drunk in a hotel room. So, because you've got to actually be there.
Well, you know what? I just want to spend a minute. I don't want to thank you, Dan, because you've spent too much of my money, but I do want to thank Frederico and Michael for all of the help and the kindness in selling us the cards. Even though Dan overspent, it didn't mean you had to sell. You'll never watch this podcast, but in case a friend of a friend of a friend tells you that I said it, we are very appreciative. I am personally appreciative of you willing to do that. Thank you very much.
And I mean, I guess when we made those 2 purchases, we didn't realize how important it was getting the runs, because normally first place is where we really want to focus on getting the runs. But at that point, we didn't know that first place wouldn't be getting finalist or semi-finalist, and that second place wouldn't be getting semi-finalist, and that the semi-finalist one would only be going to third and fourth. So it worked out really well that we did get those runs, because we ended up with a couple of semi-finalist copies, which wouldn't have happened if we'd tried to pass on the runs and wait for the first and second.
Yeah, and Dan, will I ever get those cards? I know pretty much at this point you and Laura are holding them for ransom, and maybe you've made it a chew toy for Sir Elton John. But am I ever? Is there a chance I'll ever see those cards from you? People say, David, do you have those cards? I go, no, I don't have those cards.
Yeah, I'll fly them out at some point.
All right, thanks, Dan. Thanks. Yeah. That's a promise. That's on camera. If you've broken a contract now, if you don't do it, okay.
And then the next day at Worlds, the Sunday, we had a few messages out to people, but we didn't have much success on the Sunday, because I'm sure people know one of the number ones ran straight off and sold to Leon Hart. He didn't speak to anyone else. He just found Leon Hart, sold straight to him. There was no opportunity to even get in there or make offers. And it worked out where we had a few different contacts, but for people who don't know, Sunday they play the matches back to back. They play the TCG is first. They play the juniors, then seniors, then masters, and then VGC they play juniors, seniors, masters, one after the other. So we had a few different contacts in different matches, but when one ends, you're trying to get some information over to them, but there is always the thing of, I might have this same contact in another one. So your offers generally on a Sunday will be a bit more reserved near the start of the day, because of the fact that you go, oh, well, if this person got a number 2, I don't want to pay way over odds for it, because I might have a number 2 here in a couple of hours. Then obviously, if that person gets number 1, we only have one option for the number 2, we go back. It ended up that basically every person we actually had any sort of contact with ended up second. So we basically had no contacts for number 1s, and our top 2 contacts, I'll say, for the number 2, there was Tord, because I think you've dealt with Tord before, and we had friends of friends who could get us in contact with him. But Tord is, in Pokemon terms, he's really famous. And after his interview, Tord had a line of people wanting him to sign stuff that literally was still going when he got called back to the stage about 4 hours later. Tord spent that entire Sunday after his match just signing stuff for people. Like, he gave all his time to the fans. And then our other contact was a guy called Michael Kelsch, who was in VGC Masters. And as I said, that is the final match of the day that's played. So after his match, they then go into the closing ceremony. And then after that's happened, that's when they're kicking everyone out of the venue. So VGC Masters are the people where we don't get an opportunity to talk to them during the day before everyone's kicked out of the venue. Luckily, in the end, we did have some other people going between us and Michael. So, as it worked out, Michael's was the one we ended up getting for the number 2. Tord, we did, people helped us make contact, but I think Tord was maybe looking for a little bit of a higher price, because Tord was more okay with just hanging on to it. Tord basically said, there was a price I think he had in mind. If he got it, he got it. If he didn't, he was fine keeping it. Michael was more on the line of, like, I want to get the best price, but I am trying to sell this. So that's why we did some more talking with Michael. And I think Tord had also said through a friend that if he was going to sell, it probably wasn't going to be until he was back home anyway. But we still didn't get to deal with Michael until a couple of days after Worlds. I ended up having to travel. We were over somewhere else in Japan. I think we were up in, I think we may have been at Akihabara that night, or we were up near north of Tokyo or whatever, and I had to change our trains. We were on the train on the way back, and I was like, oh no, we have to get off like 4 stops early and go meet some people somewhere else. It wasn't even meeting Michael. He'd already left, and he'd left the card with friends. I'll say with Michael, from Michael, we got the number 2 trainer. He sadly wanted to hang on to his finalist. He wanted, because it was just the one copy of the finalist, so he didn't want to let that go. He wanted that to be the card, that he kept to remember the tournament, and then was willing to let go of the number 2, because the price is obviously a lot higher on that. But we still did also pick up his quarterfinalist to 32 run just for a little bit extra, just because he wanted to get rid of that. And, as I say, it helped us close the sale, offering a little bit more to get those. So you paid a total of 76,000 for the number 2 and those stamp cards.
Wait a minute. You did it again.
Yeah.
I just got done criticizing you, ostracizing you, lambasting you. I did so many things to get you to shut your darn mouth when it came to spending my money. You ignored it completely, and you just spit out for the world. The entire world now knows that I spent $76,000 on a card. Dan, are you not a good listener? Did I do something wrong to you today other than, notwithstanding the pink hair comments? What did I do, buddy? How did I screw this one up?
For people watching, the fun part of this is that I didn't even make that payment. David made that payment from back in America because they wanted a bank transfer.
There is just nothing.
There is.
We've gone downhill right now. And yeah. Uncle Dave is completely broke. So if you guys could do me a huge favor, can you guys look at my GoFundMe page? It says GoFundMe Uncle Dave Pokemon. I'm asking for very small contributions, which I'll use either for Pokemon card purchases or to enter the political arena. I can't enter the political arena due to skeletons in the closet. By the way, Dan is considered one of my skeletons in the closet, but we can't talk about that now because he's got to go and fill out forms and they won't let him run his podcast because he can't say certain things. Okay, Dan, I get it. Fine. 76,000. Now everybody knows.
Yeah, so we'd also picked up some players' sets. I know I got you one player's set. I don't remember what we paid for those. I think it was around 1,200. It was about what they were going for. We got that, and then you're getting one of Laura's staff cards because she got 4 staff cards total. So me and her are getting one, and you're getting one of those. So as it happened, as I was leaving Japan, you were still missing the number 1, the champion, and the finalist.
Let's stop there.
Then,
wait.
Yeah.
Stop. Thanks, Dan. Good story. Okay, let me fill in some holes before Dan goes on to the next part of this story. I got to fill in a few things, all right? Oh, boy, I shouldn't have said that. That was an inadvertent comment about that. Forget what I just said. For all of you, what are the people that don't let you say things? What are they called, Dan?
What, the censors?
What?
The censors don't let you say stuff?
Yeah, so forget I said censors. Please forget that I said that. And let me tell you a few things. Number 1, Dan glossed over very quickly the fact that Leonhardt got the 1 card. And I want you to know that because of somebody's feeling of Leonhardt's, I do not know Leonhardt. I am not commenting on him personally. I don't care. I don't know him. He might be the greatest guy in the world. Congratulations that he got the number 1 card. That's fantastic. But I want to say that whoever sold him that number 1 card, and they did it on his hype, on Leonhardt's hype, they basically cost themselves probably a minimum of $30,000 because they sold it for about $70,000, and it's easily worth $100,000, which is what my offer is. Well, I'm sorry, that was a 2. Was that a 1, Dan? That might be a 1. So, but that would be my offer on a 1, minimally $100,000 or so. So we know that just by buying into the hype, I got to sell it to him, you're going to cost yourself $30,000. When it comes to selling these cards for all you guys players and whatever, don't buy into who it is you're selling to. Get a best value for yourself, the best deal for yourself, and not the rest of it. There are so many. Dan talked about this in a previous podcast. Dan is much more wise than his years or his life expectancy, okay? What Dan said is the influx of social media influencers right now is tremendous. And their click views and what they want to get out of these purchases is crazy, okay? So let's talk about for a moment the fact that I know that a number 2 sold to someone subsequent to my purchase for over at least $100,000. Okay, I'm not going to name the names or anything, but I know for a fact. And that person is I'm not sure, I might be a live streamer or something, but somebody with a bunch of viewers and not as famous as I didn't know the person's name, but there's a lot of people I don't know their name and they still have tremendous followers and they're making a lot of money in the hobby. And that person took it, got the clicks and likes on it, and then resold it again for like another 10,000. So a number 2 ended up going for much higher at some point. I was very fortunate and very lucky now to know that I got ours for 76,000. At the point I'm like, what am I even thinking to pay that much? I wasn't going to tell you guys the price, but Dan revealed it. And once it's out the bag, what am I going to do? Put it back in the bag? What I couldn't I? That's just stupid. We could just edit this podcast before any of you guys see it. This is the dumbest thing. I think we're live and talking to people. We're not live. We're sitting here in our bedrooms in our pajamas and just talking to each other. In fact, Dan has pink hair. I didn't even do my hair. I don't have much hair to do. Okay, I digress. So anyways, let me tell you the rest of the story about this, all right? Number one, I'm going to summarize the point on the first point. Don't just sell it to somebody because they're famous and lose yourself money. Okay, now, Tord, who I have bought a card from before, Uncle Dan will tell us in a few minutes what I bought before from him, and that was not a card. Tord is not one to typically sell his cards when he wins them right away. Tord is a rock star in maybe Norway or wherever the heck he comes from. Like Dan said, sitting there with, this is the word, I wasn't there. I heard about this from Dan and afterwards. Tord had a throng, Throng, of fans, and he signed everything for them, okay? So when we went to Tord and said, we want to buy your number 2, luckily I bought it from the German person later because Tord didn't end up selling his, he elected not to sell. Well, let me tell you what's going on with Tord. Dan doesn't know this. I've kept this from him because I like to keep secrets from all of my friends. Tord was contacted by a UK entity called Baldwin Auctions. And I just met them. I met them at the Magic convention. Here, I'm holding a card up here. And Baldwin Auctions is going to start up a Pokemon side of their auctions. Would you like to know who works for them, Dan? Tom Hall. Tom Hall works for them. And so Tom and his boss decided to contact Tord. And Tord decided to auction his card through their company to give them their first real, large, legitimate type of situation. So guys, here's what Tord did. Tord took his card. He had PSA through Baldwin Auctions, and these guys, they helped him. He had his card graded by PSA as a 9, and he had it pedigreed. They decided to take a gamble and write on there, hey, Tord won this card in the number as a number 2 in the 2023 championships. It's on the PSA. I don't have the card. They have the card. And it's going to go off on auction about October 21st. I expect that that card to bring somewhere in the neighborhood, I'm guessing here, of about 120,000. I'm not sure it will or won't. They know it's going to bring over $100,000. I can't say any more than that because it isn't true that they know anything. But if you understand auctions, you'll know what I mean by the comment. But I encourage you guys to watch. These are nice people. Take a look at Baldwin Auctions out in the UK and see if you could follow that auction. So here's the question. Was that a good thing that Tord pedigreed it or not? This whole concept of pedigree we're going to talk more about. I showed it to you in the last podcast when somebody said that yellow front card, blue back, WotC, whatever Neo filler card was pedigreed to the WotC editor, meaning his name was on it. And so folks have come to me now and we're talking about my collection and they're like, hey, should we pedicure? You know what? Your toes, David, they need a good pedicure. And I'm not afraid to do that, even though I really haven't done that. So we should either pedigree or pedicure. For all of you women out there, and for Dan, we should pedicure. And for the rest of us that have a really incredible collection, we should pedigree. And Dan, for the dogs, maybe as well in the future. So pedigree-wise, they are like, David, maybe you want to pedigree all your trophies and we just grade them all and we're like, the person collection, trophy collection, or whatever. I don't really care. So it's interesting that Tord did not sell that card and then put it at auction and guaranteed himself at least $100,000. Now, here's what's funny about Tord. Tord's a great guy. But you know what? When you're as popular as Tord has more signers than we have followers on our podcast, which really is just a bad commentary on the podcast and a great commentary on him. He's in town. Tord is coming to town this weekend. He's in LA with his girlfriend. She's coming to a convention here or something in Vegas. And Tord has kindly agreed to sell me his finalist card, which is really cool. So I will get his finalist card to accompany the number 2 card I got from the German winner, and that will fill out that part of the portfolio. And then I have fortunately purchased already another card, part of the number 1, but not the number 1 trophy, which Dan will finish up on here. And that's it. And then Dan has talked about, I'll say one more thing because I think it's interesting. Dan has talked a lot about the concept of the David Person price. So that's the idea that we go into Worlds and I really want a card and I shouldn't overpay, but I'm going to die soon. So sometimes I'll put the financial future at risk and say I'll pay an extra 5 or 10 or 15,000 to grab it while the grabbing is good. And so I do want to say that I've been told that recently a number 4, I think, from this year sold for maybe 19,000 subsequent to the completion of Worlds. Or maybe it was even last year, Dan. I think I told you last year. I'm not really sure. So I could have told Dan it was last year, but this is Dan's idea of the longer you go from something when it's not on that popularity screen right now and everybody wants it, that sometimes there's people holding these cards and they didn't take advantage of the hoopla in the beginning at the time it was won. And so they end up getting a lesser price. And I guess I was inadvertent in my comment. I recall it was 2022, number 3 or 4 that just sold.
I know. I'm pretty sure I know who sold it. So it was last year's number 4.
Okay. So that's it, Dan. I finally stopped talking, which is amazing in and of myself. I'd like to slap myself, but I don't want you to get censored on camera. Dan, what else you got?
Well, it's good because you said a lot of stuff there that I want to respond to. So first I want to talk about the prices that you mentioned, because you started off by saying that someone cost themselves a lot of money by selling to Leon Hart and then mentioned that a number 2 had sold for more than what you paid. So I want to go a bit into that and say that that higher price for that number 2, that offer did not exist on site. The people who were there that weekend, there was no one on site who was saying, I will pay this 100K for the number 2 and I have the means to do so.
Right.
If there was, we would have increased our offer.
Right.
But
we know, Dan, right, that the highest offer we knew of that had been presented to the kid, he wouldn't have sold it, was 75,000. And we went 76,000. And I'd be remiss if I don't throw this in right now because I talk so much I forget to say the most important things. This kind of deal does not happen, number 1, without Dan Norton involved in my corner. There are too many big players, and some people want to be away from the big players. They don't want all of that, the rest of it. They just want to sell for a good price to somebody who's not going to flip. That is Dan Norton. That is Ruben Felipe Pereira, okay, in Spain, who worked diligently behind the scenes to make all this happen. That was Tom Hall this year, working with these guys to make this happen. I'm going to forget somebody else. I'm sure there's got to be at least one more I'm forgetting. Then there were additional people that came in, like the person representing the German kid. He came in, and I talked to him from across the world and was able to illustrate my provenance and my success in the past of doing this and never letting somebody down. So your reputation counts for a lot. And he was able to help in getting the card to Dan when Dan made Laura get off the train 4 stops early. Laura, by the way, none of this happens without Laura. So Laura, thank you to you for allowing us to usurp your time with Dan and get off stops 4 early. I am mightily grateful to everybody that I mentioned. And Dan, if there's anybody else I forgot, throw that in and then keep going.
Yeah. Well, I was just saying that about that offer not existing at Worlds to counterpoint that with when you talked about the kid selling to Leon Hart.
Yes.
So the kid who sold to Leon Hart didn't just sell the cards. The kid kept the physical trophy, but he sold the number 1, all of the stamped Paradise Resorts, and then everything else. So there was like the jacket with Champion on it, the play mat with Champion on it, the hat with Champion on it. I think there was a bag with Champion on it. Again, all of those items were 1 of 6 because it was only the winners that got them. And he sold all of that together to Leon Hart for 70,000. At the time, I believe that when that sale happened, Vance had already won in Masters, and we had already made the offer to Vance of 100,000 for just the cards. So, it would be the number 1 and then the champion and the other stamped ones. So the difference between those two things is when we bought the number 2 at 76, which turned out to be lower than a future sale, we were the highest offer we knew of. We were beating every other offer, and no one else on site was offering more than that. But the kid that sold to Leon Hart, we had already made an offer of 30,000 more for less stuff. So that's where that big difference comes in, is that the offer was there. The offer was on site. It was already happening at that time. And then when you said you bought from, Tord before, it either would have been, I think he was 3rd or 4th at Worlds 2019. It might have been that you bought from him, or it could have been one of his champion Internats promos because he's won.
No, it was a Worlds card. It probably was like a number 3 from back in the day. It was the last one I didn't have for a long time. I feel like it might have been a 2017 or something. Maybe
it would have been a 2019.
Okay. Okay.
He was either third or fourth in 2019.
Okay, so that's what
So
it
it would
was.
have been that one. You might have also picked up a champion or two from him because I think he's won more internationals than anyone else. So I mean, even if you didn't like directly pick it up through some purchase, you might have picked up one or two somewhere. I guess with the champion ones, there's a lot less of discussing and having to talk to them in like one-on-one than there is with trophy cards. And yeah,
Tord has asked me when he comes to Vegas and I get the card, he's asked me to come and see some of my collection. So
Yeah.
I just after we've reiterated the kind of throngs of fans he has, I'm going to restate and tell him you cannot come and see my collection unless we take several photos where I'm able to use them and see if I can get my own groupies, just like you have your own set of
there you
groupies.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you were talking about Providence and your history with the hobby helping out with that number 2, the way that really helped out is obviously they didn't want PayPal because I think it's possibly to do with German taxes, and obviously the exchange rate on PayPal, if you're not just paying the same currency, isn't great. So they wanted a bank transfer. But by the time we got a price, there was absolutely no way a bank transfer was going to clear before I'd left Japan and before Michael's friends had left Japan. But it was the winners of the first and second place, at least from last year, whose trophy cards you'd bought. I think we told the story before. The number 1 trainer went all over the world before I finally brought it to you. They were able to back you up and say, yep, David has bought the cards from us before. He's a good stand-up guy. And, he went through Ruben and everything, and Ruben vouched for you as well. And they were willing to let the card go before the bank transfer had cleared, based 100% on your reputation. Obviously you sent the screenshots and said, I've done this is what's happening, but they actually gave the card to me without having any money in their bank account, just purely based on people reassuring them that you were good to your word.
Yeah. So again, I definitely am good for my word, and I am so appreciative of these folks doing that. I would never jeopardize anything, but
Yeah.
people do worry, and I understand it, and I'm very fortunate to have that opportunity. So
yeah. So you said something. You were like, "Oh, you bought a card, and you said it's part of the number 1, but not quite the number 1, the champion stamped card." I think you were alluding to, but you didn't straight up say it.
yeah, because as I was saying it, Dan, I was thinking that I would do it and look what I found later on, but at this point, who cares? So, anyways, I do now own the champion card, which I'm very happy to own.
Yeah.
Again, because as Dan said, finalist and champion were distributed in a different way this year. They didn't come from everybody didn't get on those top 2 players, top 2 finishers or whatever. So it just seems they're definitely more limited to a certain extent, notwithstanding the handful that the Unite players got, the 5 folks that won for their top finish or whatever. So but I'm glad to have that too.
Yeah. So the only thing you're still missing from this year's Worlds is that number 1. I mean, I know Vance knows our number, the VGC winner, the Japanese player. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but I know Ruben's had some ongoing discussions with him, so at least he knows your offer. They both know if they want to sell and they've got a higher offer, come back to you, come back to me, come back to Ruben, whatever, we can work something out. So fingers crossed, and obviously if you do get it, we'll mention it in a future podcast. We'll talk about it then. But for now, that is where your Worlds 2023 set sits at.
Yeah, and so Dan, I mean, we should summarize real quick. It's pretty cool. Do I wish I had the 1? Absolutely. Am I missing the 1? Certainly. I'm also missing a few children I had, back in the day that they don't stay in contact. So Dan, I can miss things, but let's talk about the positive side. Let's spin it, right, buddy?
Yeah.
When you go back to 2004, number 1 trophy, and you then fast forward for all the way through 2019, there were 2 absent years, 2020 and 21. They don't exist. Then you go to 2022 and now to 2023. Little old guy out here, and I mean, I am little and I am old and I'm a guy. This little old guy has every single trophy card ever put out there all the way through 2023, except now the number 1. And that's pretty fun. That's all. I don't have that much pride in anything. I can lift pretty well in the gym for an old guy. And if you want to have an eating contest, any of you, and you want to do it for Pokemon cards, don't do it with me. You'll lose. So yeah, that's where I'm at. And again, my thanks to Dan and the entire crew of folks that are out and about searching for stuff. And I didn't even mention Drew Goritsky. Is that his name? Goritsky?
Oh yeah, Drew helped us with some of the connections.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
appreciative to everybody who's even trying. That's it. It's just a kindness thing that people don't have to do. So, thank you.
Finally, let's play a game before we go.
Okay, so since we have had some pretty long discussions there with both the comments and all of that stuff from Worlds, we're going to drop a few sections. We're just going to move into our fake ending and Dave's job interview, whatever. I will say, obviously, follow us on all of the socials. Instagram is the main one that we use. It's Koffee Talks podcast. I know Instagram was glitching out for me the last week or so, but I think we've got it fixed. You can follow us on Twitter at Coffee Talks Poke, TikToks at Coffee Talks Pokemon. There will be stuff on there soon. And I promise you, I'm working on these audio-only versions. They will be on podcast sites very, very soon. If you do happen to be listening to one of those, you can catch the video version at youtube.com/DJ Gigabyte. And the last thing to mention before we go into David's interview or whatever, next week we are trying out guests for the first time on the podcast, or guest, I should say. We are going to have Pokemon Radar, who does his own podcast. He is going to be on the podcast with us next week. So if you leave any comments, ask questions to Radar, know that he will be here with us answering stuff, assuming nothing goes wrong. And then myself and possibly David may make appearances on his podcast also in the future. But yeah, that is the end of all of the Pokemon stuff. Hopefully you enjoyed. And now we're going to get to something absolutely unbearable because Dave's going to do some weird job interview thing. We're already at over 90 minutes. There's so much to cut out of this, hopefully. Anyway, off you go, David. We'll do this and then we'll all go to bed.
So, Dan, just a couple more things before I start the last segment. So nobody should be hanging around unless you want to hang around. But I'm not even to the end segment first. First of all, Dan always says Coffee Talks at this and that and follow us. And he never says it should be Coffee Talks with a K. Because if he's got to start doing that, because when you listen to radio broadcasts and say, like I'm Amy with an A-M-I, not Y. So it's Coffee Talks with a K. And that's why we have no followers, because everybody spells coffee with a C. All right. Thanks, Dan. I just, I'm trying to correct all the things before I correct the job stuff. Number 2, Radar. What is it? What is the name I should know? Is it Radar, Pokemon Radar? What is his name?
Pokemon Radar.
Okay, I love Pokemon Radar. I've been on with him before. I don't know his name because I don't know anybody's name. I've forgotten everything over the last couple of months due to some health issues. But I haven't forgotten all of you. I love all of you, and I love Squirtle. I don't know why I love Squirtle more than any other. Why did I pick out Squirtle? I'm not sure. I just love Squirtle as much as Dan loves Vaporeon. I say Vaporeon, he goes Vaporeon. He's got a way of pronouncing things. You can even pronounce it, or you can pronunciate it, or you can pronouncing. But Pokemon Radar, one thing that you want to do is Radar. You should watch him because he's way more handsome than Dan and I. You put both of us together, quadruple the handsomeness, and you get to someone like him. Way more smart. He's got 1,010 more followers. Take that and quadruple that. And then let's say what I want to say here. The reason this took so long today, and I'm apologizing for Dan, is when Dan gets rolling and he doesn't stop talking, the guy will get on a tangent, and I appreciate it. We have to appreciate what a historian does. It's no different if you're watching CNN at night and you're talking about presidential stuff. It's very interesting to listen to him. You get engrossed and encapsulated inside it. That's what's happening with Dan. So, Dan, it's okay that it went so long. It's on you, but all of us loved it. You did a great job today. Okay, now, if you're still here, you don't get it. You don't understand what we do. You haven't been watching. You haven't been listening over the last 21, 22, 15 podcasts. At this point, you should be gone. We're cleaning the movie theater. There's no reason to be sitting here unless you and your girlfriend or boyfriend are fighting. So at this point, we are going to do our end thing. But thanks for joining us and have a good rest of your day. Stick around if you want to hear something fun. So Dan, last week at this time, we were talking about your job interview prospects, and they didn't go very good. And that's okay. That's why we learn. And, that's why you have a preseason in football. We have a preseason for you in the job market. So Dan, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to look around your room and pick up something that's not Pokemon card related. Just pick up anything for me, buddy. Whatever your closest thing is that you see.
I'm in the Pokemon card room. The only thing not Pokemon in here is my computer.
No, you can't pick that up. Find something else, Dan. There'll be something else. There'll be anything else that you look at it and you say it's not Pokemon, okay? I can look at 100 things on my desk here and they're not Pokemon related. Pick something up, Dan.
Okay.
Put it up and let me see what it is, Dan. Okay, now if I had good internet, I could see what it is. Tell me what it is, Dan, so I know.
It is a 3-prong to 2-prong plug converter that I had to buy in Japan.
Okay. So like what is it used for? Because if I could see it better, I'd know, but I can't see it at all. So what is it really used for? It's like a
So
converter for different types of power outputs and that kind of thing.
yeah, so in Japan they do still use the same prongs that the US do, but they very often don't have the hole for the third grounding prong that a
Okay.
lot of the US ones do. So I had to get a
Yes.
3 to 2 pin,
Okay.
and I don't really know what this wire's for. If it's plugged in, I don't touch it.
Okay. Dan, I need you to do me a favor, okay, buddy? This is
Yeah.
your job training. I need you to sell that to me. I want you to sell me what you're holding, and I want you to tell me why I should buy it from you. Go ahead.
You going to Japan anytime
I,
soon?
I've just handed it to you.
Yeah.
I'm now telling you in the job interview, you need to sell it to me. Tell me why I should own that thing.
Okay. Are you going to Japan anytime soon?
I don't think so, Dan. I mean, it's a possibility. I'm not sure.
Okay. Do any of the outlets in your house have the third hole for the grounding prong missing?
I'm not really all that familiar with the the grounding in my house, Dan. I mean, I don't think so. They may be.
All right. You have no use for this. I don't want to sell you something you don't need.
Dan, your job.
I can't tell you something that's only useful in Japan. If you sell it, the thing I have to try and sell now is something that is only needed if you're an American going to Japan. And if my first question is, "Are you going to Japan?" and your answer's no, then I am out of ideas, David.
I don't really want to let you off the hook, but just because I feel like you're so uncomfortable, like the first time you met my sister, I'm going to let you pick up anything else. Now, don't change it. Just pick up something else. Maybe a bit more of a normal item, if you wouldn't mind.
I don't have normal items in here. This is
Dan, do you have a pencil in the room?
no.
Do you have a pen in the room, Dan?
I don't think so.
Do you have a pair, Dan? Do you have a pair of glasses?
Yeah, they're on my face.
Okay.
I have a pair of glasses.
Sell them to me, Dan.
No, I need these. I need them to
Dan,
see.
you can't do that. That's not going to work.
I can.
Okay.
Now we're in
Here's
40 minutes.
We're going to do this. We're going to change it up because I'm not going to play. I'm not letting you get off the hook. It's not going to work. We have to get you gainfully employed. Dan, I am the boss and I'm trying to hire you for a job right now. Here's what I'm going to say to you. I want you to tell me why my hair should look like yours.
Well, I just think it looks cool. Do you like punk music? Because I like punk music, and that's why my hair looks like this. I think the punk aesthetic is great for music and fashion. Are you into that?
Dan, I think you need to stop talking so much about yourself and talk more about me. So don't say you into that and all that. Say, David, I'd like to ask you a few questions about yourself. Ask me enough questions that you can get a feeling for how you might dovetail that hair discussion into something that I need.
I don't want to ask you anything though, David. It's 9 o'clock at night. It's 9 o'clock at night in Ohio.
Oh, so wait a minute. So I don't.
We had to record so late tonight. I want to go to bed.
Oh, Dan, this isn't going to get you a job. That shows me that you're not willing to work when you're tired. I want you to.
Correct.
No, you have to value the company over yourself, Dan. We're going to pay your salary. We expect
How much is the salary?
What?
How much is the salary?
6 figures, $100,000.
Okay, what does the company do?
What?
What does the company do? What's the company for?
The company is a cutting edge, VC capitalized, innovative startup tech that's going to inject Pokemon images in normal products, do co-licensing, and to find out to basically sell, allow more buying of products through a Pokemon association. So we like you because you've got a pretty decent background in the hobby and you seem like a creative fella. Okay? But the question is, I need you to show me if you can sell me on why I should have that hair.
My bigger question is, do you already have that Pokemon license or not? Because I do not want to join a company that's going to get sued.
We have both licenses, trademarks, and we're patent pending on stuff that we can't even reveal to you until you can sell us your hair.
I don't know. I like my hair this way.
You can't do
Have
that.
your hair however you want. I'm not going to
Dan,
convince
what
someone
you
to
have
have their
to
hair.
do,
Oh my
you have to
god.
ask me about myself. That's how you find out what it is that's important to me, and then you
I'm
associate.
so hungry. I haven't had dinner yet.
Dan, I understand, okay? I see what's going on right now. You're showing that sense of desperation, but
Yeah.
I don't want to let you off the hook because I think you could be such an asset to our company.
Hire me then.
I realize that, being a vegan and stuff and your hunger and what that does to the fact that your mortality is challenged anyways is not good.
What do you mean vegan?
I
I'm lactose intolerant. I'm not vegan.
thought it was the same thing. Sorry. So gluten-free matters or not, or you just still hate the taste?
No, I don't eat gluten-free. I tried it once because my doctors thought I had celiac disease before I found out I was lactose intolerant. So I tried going gluten-free for a while, but I didn't like it. And it's that I can't eat cheese. Like, I can't eat cheese and I can't drink regular milk.
Okay. So
That's what lactose intolerant is. It's nothing to do with choices.
That's
like,
fine.
I still eat meat.
Make a choice to sell me your hair right now. You're going to lose this job, and Laura's not going to stay with you forever with no gainful income. Make a choice. Sell me your hair. Ask me something about myself.
Do you like punk music? I already asked you. Do you like 1970s punk music? That's the only reason you'd have this haircut.
No, that's not true, because Dan, what you say is, I'd like to ask you a few questions, sir, before I sell you my hair, okay? I'd like to know, can you talk to me for a moment about some of your favorite colors? And I'd say, well, Dan, I really have two favorite colors. I would say black and pink are my two favorite colors. Oh, pink. All right. And David, what do you think about as far as, are you kind of a guy that's very staid in your ways, or do you like to try new things? How willing are you to get out there and change the way that people view you and stuff? And I'd say, yeah, I'm okay. I mean, I'm 62. I'm going to die soon. So sure, I'm not afraid to throw something against the wall and see if it sticks every once in a while. And then you'd say something like, here's the thing. Have you ever seen the program Undercover Boss? And I'd say, yeah, I guess I have. And you'd say, well, what about that? I mean, what do you think about maybe putting this opportunity together where you do this kind of hair, you learn more about the new company going under. This gives you a chance to try this and maybe kind of see if it makes you feel like when I wear this hair, Mr. Boss Man, I feel like a new person sometimes. People cannot see through me in the other way. You see, Dan, you have to interview. But right now, all you care about is monetizing without postulizing, okay? You feel like, prophesizing without, you just add something else in. So do you see what I'm saying? I'm going to get you through this, Dan. We're going to get you a job, all right? Hey, thanks, guys. I got to go because Dan's hungry and he's mad and moody. And so, remember this. If you're still watching, we love you to death. You're one of a very few. We need help. I need help. Put Dan on the sideline. Dan's not ever going to work. He's going to have to piggyback off me for the rest of his life. And he deserves that. So do me a favor. If you're watching and you know anything about live streaming and you want to help me, and I know who you are, reach out to me independently. Say, David, I'm going to help you get the OBS up and running again. I'm going to help you show the special effects you can put in there. And I'm going to start live streaming on some stuff. And then I'm going to show Dan how it's done. And then we're both going to take this new product that's coming out that's going to be the hottest thing you've ever seen. It already is. Trust me. We sold 179 cases of the product on the closeout day. So I want to be able to do that, do it successful. It'll allow for more interaction. That's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you for watching. Thank you for putting up with as much talking as I do. Thank you for being our friends. And we appreciate you. Dan?
Yeah, thanks for watching. Yeah, I'm so tired. Message David about streaming. Leave questions for Radar in the comments, and we'll see you guys again next week.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Koffee Talks with Dan Norton and David Person, featuring music by More Than Never and artwork by Laura Norton. A special shout out to all of our Patreon members. Join us again next time.
But they don't want you to have a